I would love to learn more about Erika, how you got into the field.
Ah,
How did you start?
how did I start? I've always wanted to be an engineer, probably like Steph, because of our parents who are like in the STEM field. But I ended up in physics. I guess that was mostly because of the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, the scholarship that I got. And then that's where I learned IBA about research. Before, kasi you would think of physics as all maths, just computing and derivation. But in the research lab I joined, which was very multidisciplinary in nature. In fact, that's where I first learned about econophysics, which is the study and modeling of socioeconomic phenomena using statistical physics. So I found that like super cool. And I fell in love with research. I fell in love with data-driven research in particular. When other physicists would do experimental physics, have tabletop experiments or go to places to conduct experiments, I would just build my computer programs where I could conduct experiments myself. And of course, in academia, as you know, publication is really the currency. And the lab that I joined was quite prolific in that field. And somehow, Iba, the Singapore government noticed the work that we were doing here in the Philippines, which was in analytics and complex system science. And the government said, hey, why not work with us in building a smart nation using data-driven simulations, working with industry and government agency, helping them innovate with data-driven science. I was relatively young then. I said, why not? No, that's really something new, very different from academia. And I guess that's how I got into data science. I'm putting it in quotes because even before it was called data science, I was already doing a lot of it. And the rest is history, joining AIM and just spreading the kind of work that Steph does, for example, just helping everyone become much more aware of this particular phenomena, this field, how it can help societies, like what Steph said, climate change, how to help in data-driven policy making, and also, of course, enterprises compete in this particular field of analytics. So, yeah, that's...
Again, yeah, way too early for me to have this level of conversation. Because there's so many things I want to ask about. But what about you, Steph? How did you start pursuing your career in this world of data science and because you're a pioneer in the Philippines. You've really shaken things up. Yeah.
All of us, I would say, I feel like Erika was underselling herself like a lot just there. But I like that we came to it from different angles. Erika came to it from more of like a scientific STEM angle. I actually came to it from more of a entrepreneurial and more of like a future. I'm very much like, I've always loved science fiction. I still do. And so I wanted to go into engineering. I wanted to go into business because I really like the idea of putting your ideas out there in the world for the free market to like slap you in the face. And then you just have to get up and say, all right, thank you. And I started my first company. I was lucky enough to go to a university where it's a very, very entrepreneurial environment. Very much about letting people fail and grow. So at Stanford, I started my first startup in my senior year, and it was a terrible idea. The idea was shit. Our execution was like very enthusiastic, but not particularly great. And of course, we run this company into the ground after a year. We raised some crazy person gives us $200,000. We spend it all in a year. We like don't get anywhere. We have a cool product, but no connection to the market. Like we didn't have a good business model. It was just awful. It was just super. Towards the end, we were all just saying like, "Oh my God, like what did we even do right?" And then we had to go back to our investor, who then said, "Well, nice try. Call me next time." And we were like, "Wow, that was crazy! What a nutty experience!" And frankly, I learned so much. There's so much that you can only learn while trying to do something. And some lessons, it seemed really like surface like some lessons, like for example, figure out who your market is. That seemed really like obvious when you're reading a postmortem of a startup or when you're like studying. But when you're trying to live it, it is genuinely really hard to figure out who your market is. Stay disciplined about that. We made the big mistake of chasing after investors and trying to tune everything we were doing around, well, what would an investor like, instead of finding a product that our market wanted. So that totally failed. I was the tech person. I was the tech founder. One of my friends was the business founder. Another one, my other two friends were like the business side founders, and I was the tech founder. That was a very formative experience for me because one, I figured out that starting businesses is really hard and really fun. And two, I really love what you can do with data technology. So I joined a startup, another startup after that as an early employee, learned my lessons. I said, I don't want to be the founder. I want to learn from people who are a bit further along than I am on this path. That startup ended up doing really well. I did like everything related to data at that startup. Then we got bought by Google. I worked at Google for a year, got a bit bored at the end of that year because, you know, when you're in a very big, successful company, whether I think it's a tech company or a conglomerate, you're very safe, right? You're very secure, but you don't have much room to pitch your own ideas at and see whether or not it's going to work. There's a lot less room for failure, I think. The safety is higher, but the opportunity to try something new and then fail at it is lower in bigger, safer companies. So then I came back to the Philippines. I started thinking machines. I started getting really involved in the open source, open science, open data community. Met a lot of great friends, Erika included. Ibba, I think that's about when I met you also, maybe a little bit into this journey.
I wanna ask a question. What made you want to come back to the Philippines? I mean, you were part of Google. You were part of a startup that was acquired. It seemed like, you know, like your career path, everything. A lot of people want to go to where you are, and you're living the dream of a lot of startup entrepreneurs. Why come back?
Because my goal in life is not to live the best version of somebody else's life. I want to live a really interesting life. Like I know myself well enough to know that I just want to chase like, what can I do that's unique and what can I do that's interesting? Because that's true to me. That's true to who I am. And the choice to go back to the Philippines at that moment felt like a more unique choice, a more interesting choice than staying at Google or even starting a company or joining a company in the Bay Area. I was just so curious about what could happen in the Philippines. And I thought that I was in a unique position of having the skills that I had at that time, a lot of these like very new. I'm always hesitant to call myself a scientist because I'm not really a scientist, you know. It's just like a fake title. Data science is just a really fake job title. I was a software engineer.
Steph, it's so funny. It's so funny how we put data science in like this.
It seems like
Erika also had that same reaction. Why? Because you are the two biggest data scientists in the country that I know. Why are you hesitant? Is it like, what's that Dunning-Kruger effect? Like the more you know, the more you feel. Yeah. Why are you hesitant?
Imprecise. It's such an imprecise title because you're not really a scientist, right? Because a scientist has a unique set of expertise. You have like bars that you have to like pass. You have to get your master's degree or a doctorate, and there's certain like criteria and standards for professional knowledge that you have to pass to be a scientist. Like you could be a chemical engineer, you could be like a physicist, you know, so it's a lot. But I feel like data science conflates a lot of statistics skills, like true pure science skills, with software engineering skills, but it also has a lot of like startup like sparkles on top of it.
I think
And
it's because of how we would define it, Steph, right? For me, like whenever I'm asked, how would you define data science? For me, it's really just solving problems and creating solutions using data-driven whatever, right? And once you're really submerged or immersed in the field, you'd know that it's a very nuanced field. And for me, like for example, whenever I tell my students, it's not about like math or statistics or physics, whatever model you're using. It's really about this systematic way of looking at things using data to just, address pain points or create innovations. So for me, it's a much bigger umbrella. That's why I put it in quotes.
Yeah, yeah, it's so big. And you could be really good at just one aspect of it and be really successful in life. Honestly, like you could be really great at cloud infrastructure, fantastic, great at data governance, fantastic, great at machine learning modeling or machine learning engineering or data operations. Those are all like very deep. I'm almost hesitant to call them like niches because they're such deep practices all on their own. That is one of the things that makes this field really hard because it's so new that it's like almost fractal, right? You take one step in and you realize that it's just as deep as it was a step before. One more step in, it's like just as complex. Going for a while.
Okay, so I'm even more confused. So if you don't consider yourselves data scientists, like what do you consider yourselves? Or is it because it is such a new kind of terminology? There's no clear process to be labeled a data scientist. It's like anybody.
There's no commonly understood. There's no common definition of data science.
It's like
there's no universal definition,
right? It's somewhere in between. Like if you're talking in the media space, right? Maria Ressa, journalist. Vloggers call themselves journalists.
Yeah, something like that, maybe.
You're more towards the Maria Ressa side.
Wala pang Nobel Peace Prize. Sorry.
Wala pang Nobel Peace Prize for data science, but there should be.
That would be a bit of a stretch, but I think that I feel like there's more and more people coming into our space, and they're also all discovering different angles to doing this work. I've really started calling this whole space data science as an umbrella term for like a whole industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, and people coming into this space can specialize in totally different things these days. AI is a lot more sophisticated than it was a few years ago. So you can really build. Have you guys tried those AI writing tools? They're really good. You give it like 5 bullet points and it spits out a whole essay for you. It's like, whoa, it's awesome.
Super wild.
Before about 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, I was like the tech columnist for Adobe magazine, right? So I had like a column, and that was early stages of AI writing tools. And I wrote like an entire column, which really didn't make sense. But it was fun. And then I played around with it recently. And now you can just type in bullets and it will, like, you want to do a product review for Amazon, and it will just spit it out. Or you want to do like an interview, and it will just spit it, and you pick the tenor, the kind of the vocabulary that you want to use. So that's crazy.
Yeah, for video, also for image processing, for video. I mean, I was playing around with a video editor earlier, and you would just use AI to find like the silences or to like crop things, and did it like quite well. I think the new innovations in our space, it's less about the tool building now and how can you get very creative in using the tools to come up with like awesome art, awesome startups, like really cool things to show other people. So I really think that we're, in stage one of computer science, people were working a lot on mainframes. You're working on like hardware, you were sending rockets to the moon, and then you get to a place where you can build like apps for iPhone, you can build like Flappy Bird for the phone. I think AI really getting to this space. It's like the Flappy Bird on the phone space. I think that's super cool. That means we're going to see a lot more things touching people.
So I guess that's probably as close as I can get to a segue to talk about how I got here, which is very, very far from how both of you got here. I'm pretty sure, and I should have this tested. Like, I have undiagnosed ADHD, so I'm pretty sure. So I'm gonna after this, somebody in my family took a test recently, and it's like, yep, that's.
Go get tested. Yeah.
I started out playing video games a lot. And my mom would always be like, man, you're not going to do anything with your life. And she's like, so I got a job writing video game reviews when magazines were a thing. All right. And then I became an editor, and I kind of met a lot of people in the video game space. And BPOs were picking up in the Philippines. So me and a few friends, we set up an animation company. Again, not knowing much about animation, just knowing we loved video games. And that grew. And we were working on some of the best video games in the world. I kind of got burned out, but I'm such a geek. I love technology, and I love imagining different ways of using technology. I think because I grew up in a time where I was the remote control, right? So every time I wake up now and I touch my phone, I'm thinking I'm in the future. I'm like Buck Rogers spinning around, and that's an old reference. But I feel like I have traveled from the Stone Age. I'm at that age to this incredible future. So I'm an optimist also. So I'm a sci-fi geek and I'm an optimist. After the video game thing, I got roped into like helping friends out on weekends, like teaching prisoners in Muntinlupa. Then we did this e-dalaw thing that allowed prisoners to connect with their families, because the poorest prisoners are the ones that families can't visit. And they realized through a study that the ones who had their families visit were more successfully rehabilitated. So I thought, hey, I can pick up my phone. This is pre-Zoom. This is like pre-Skype era. And I can talk to my uncle in the US and ask him to buy me, corned beef or sanka, which is another Tito reference. Because that's whenever somebody comes home from the US, you would get like sanka. And we saw the impact of that. And I thought, that's really cool. Then in Smoky Mountain, on weekends again, while I've got my day job, where I thought, what can I do here? My friends, they wanted to do a medical mission, and that's awesome. My lawyer friends were doing like pro bono work. I don't have any of those skills. Like I play video games, so I entered one of those cyber cafes, right? In Smoky Mountain, where these kids who are third generation scavengers, they would scavenge and they would use that money and they would be playing the same games I was playing. And that blew me away. I was like, all right, there's a place where you can connect here. And then I thought, what can we do? I mean, I'm so curious about their lives. And we introduced Buhay Ko sa Smoky Mountain, wherein we brought in journalists to teach them how to document their lives, really well-known photographers, bloggers, directors, right? And they were doing like food blogs in Smoky Mountain. When blogs were a thing, not vlogs. It was, Nokia era pa. And they were doing like, one of them did a K-pop blog, and another did a fashion blog. Wow. None of these became massive successes, but what I realized then is that before we came in and we disrupted their lives, they wanted to be cargador, they wanted to be a police officer, you know what I mean, like a truck driver. And then after we disrupted their lives, one of them became like a writer for the Manila Times. Another started working with Gawad Kalinga. Like, like and then it made me realize that we're all kind of like the little prince on that island, on that planet. Like, we all live in this tiny planet, right? And your tiny planet could be a gated community. And I remember talking to Kintin about this. Like, living in a gated community detaches you, and you're limited to that world, because then your school is probably also, you don't see what's outside. A farmer or a fisherman, they maybe they're on a water world, right? And their tiny planet is ocean or rice fields, and every so often a ship will come in and bring in bits of information. And we're all on these planets, and I think all of us here are lucky because A21 allows us to become astronauts. And we can like visit, I can visit the Steph planet, and I can visit the Erika planet and take a little bit with me. And now my planet gets bigger. So from there, I moved on to like realizing I want to be an astronaut, right? And then I started helping out the Solar Energy Foundation, because I love motorcycles, and it was an excuse to ride around the country for 19 days and bring solar energy units to off-grid communities. And then after that, I got fired. Well, I didn't get fired, but they realized they didn't need me because it's 19 days I was out in the mountains. And I realized I kind of wanted to do more impactful tech kind of things, right? And that's kind of what got me here, like entrepreneurship and sci-fi and video games. Yeah.
And where's
That's a tough question.
Next, Ibba? What's up on deck for you? Because I think you had the most varied career of the three of us.
I don't say no. The only time I say no is when it's really bandwidth, right? Dual income, no kids. Very low overhead, so I can take a lot of risks that I usually wouldn't. But yeah, it's really what drives me. Whenever I get an offer, because I got an offer before to be like editor for like online editor for a really well-known, like not adult, but like like those sexy girl magazines, like, but not like it was well known. And I was like, nah, that's not what I want to do. It's really what my grandmother, if I make my grandmother proud, then I'll do it. That's like my guide, right? So right now, I've been trying to create technology for these communities, these marginalized communities, for people who don't have access to technology for a long time, because I really think that this is a game changer. I'm an optimist, right? And because I've been trying to do it for 10 years and pandemic hits, and that was the ultimate driver of innovation. Before the pandemic, we were in 5,000 of these Sari stores, these mom and pops. And today, we're going to be in about 220,000. We're going to be touching 220,000 Sari stores by the end of the year, in a couple of months. And going to why I wanted to reach out with you, we're getting crazy amounts of data. Like we have data on if a volcano hits, what's the first thing they buy, right? We have data on right before a typhoon hits, what do they think their needs are versus immediately after, what are their needs? We have data on if there's a hard lockdown or modified lockdown, whatever the name it's called. The more confusing the name is, the more panic you see on a micro level. So that's why I wanted to reach out with you. How do we use that data to help these communities? Yeah.
I mean, I do like hanging out with the A21 people because it's different from hanging out purely at a tech conference where we talk mostly about methods. People like you, I feel like there's a lot more interesting problem areas that you know more about Sari stories than me, absolutely. So it's not, so when you ask the question, what do we do about the data? It's for me, it's like, how do we meet each other midway, right? Like, I don't know Sari stores well enough to tell you, oh, if you do X, Y, and Z, this will like completely like change the way you do business. But it's more of like, hey, how can we like spark creativity and imagination to each other? How can you teach me a little bit about what you're trying to do? How can I teach you a bit about what's more possible with tech? Or I think, I don't know about Erika, but a big part of my job these days is looking at something and saying, I don't think you need a super fancy solution for this. Why don't we look at a simple linear model? Why don't we look at writing this as a SQL query? I think they'll get you 80% of the way there in like a 20th of the time. So when you're talking about how can we use this data, right? The question to me is, how can I help you create data infrastructure so that the moment you or anybody who works for you has an idea, you can immediately act on it. You can immediately see if it makes sense. Does the data support what I have in mind? And if it does, can I act on it? So that's more of what's in my head, right? Like that piece of it.
I just want to build with what you said, Steph. No, that's also, of course we mature, right? We get to, like, from 5 years ago, okay, we can do this model, this and that. But then eventually we start talking to, like, maybe since 2017, I've worked, Steph, with over maybe 50 industry projects and then more than 80 scoping activity. And then, Eva, what you will learn is that the key business questions are the more important ones, like what Steph said. Like, what are the questions maybe that you want addressed more specifically? And then we just try our best to craft maybe descriptive analytics questions to just answer, to meet you halfway, as how Steph actually put it. And like what Steph said, we don't obsess on the kind of model or how complex the model is. Even a simple EDA would be very useful. And I have this really wonderful use case, Steph, from DBS, wherein they just used descriptive analytics. It's really just a plot, and then they already saw patterns in the data that help them in their operations, right? So as you mature in this field of data analytics and you continue working with people and groups like IBAS, for example, you learn that it's really a collaboration and you don't impose specific tools. In fact, it's the tools and the data that would adjust to the needs of the stakeholders.
You know what? This reminds me, when you're like a beginner, when you're a beginner outdoors person, beginner camper, you bring so much equipment with you. You are so loaded. You have like a pot, like every kind of pot, every kind of knife, like you have like 15 kinds of like technical wear, a backpack, a tent, like a hat, blah, blah, blah. But when you're an expert, you can go out there with just like 4 things and you're fine. And so I think a lot of me maturing as a data professional has been like figuring out like, okay, I can drop this, I can drop this, I can recreate this. I can have a multi-purpose tool for that. Like, how do I go out? Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So I'm not a data professional. We're the farmers, right? We're the ones getting it, and you guys are the ones who are doing awesome things with it, right? Trying to make sense of it. But from a KPI standpoint, right? From measuring impact, that's been one of the things that I've been racking my brain over. Like, I know what investor KPIs that we have to target, right? But what are our impact KPIs? And we spent, well, we're still trying to figure it out, but we realized it doesn't have to be complex, right? It doesn't have to be like driven by nutrition, driven by it. Our realization is that it's just uplift. It's just how much more do they sell with our technology, and that cascades to the community, right? Because they're providing more value, they're earning more, they're able to hire people. You know what I mean? It could be that simple. But it took a long time to get to that simplicity.
And that's amazing. And finding the right metric that you can act on, because I think a common mistake I see people making is they pick metrics that they cannot act upon, which is then, data has to drive action. Otherwise, it's just there. It doesn't live. So metric of uplift is a good choice because it puts everybody behind the same big picture number. And so many things impact uplift, right? But if you know uplift is your North Star, that drives all of the other actions you can take in the business. And then the next question is, do you have all the information you need to orient and decide on what to do across every level of your company, available, that the data is logical, that it's not garbage, that it's available at the speed at which you can act upon it. And if not, then that's when you can build the technology to make it so. And anything that doesn't fall along that path is like a nice to have. You don't do it. Then after that, after you have your clear path to action, then I think you can build a lot of the more fancy AI use cases on top of the other end. But I really think that like direct line of what's your North Star KPI? Does everybody in your company have the data they need to act on that? To take actions that bring you closer to that North Star every single day at the pace at which you need it. Build all of that first.
So I'm gonna we mirror that because one of the we don't go out to make Sari stores, right? We are our hero clients, our hero customers, our hero nanaypreneurs, moms. Are the successful Sari stores. So we go there and we understand from them what makes them successful. We don't teach them and tell them, hey, use QuickBooks, you're going to be successful. We understand what makes the because it's difficult to run a Sari store. It's easy to get into. It's difficult to become a successful one, right? So we learn what makes them successful. And that's what we digitize. These analog processes that help them grow their business, that's what we digitize. And then we amplify and replicate to not super successful stores, but the ones that are on that tipping point, right? And then it's really their processes that we make better, as opposed to imposing what we think from what our education tells us is the way to do it.
Erika, when you're teaching, so you've taught like 3 classes, 3 in about or 4?
I'm teaching right now.
Or no, how many batches of
cohorts? Oh, we have actually, the program has graduated over 200 MSDS degree holders, right? I think we're in our 5th cohort. So that has been awesome because given our discussion, this is also what we emphasize in the MSDS program, Ibba. You're not as familiar as Steph because Steph, I really consulted with her when we were still designing the curriculum. We made sure that the smart skills are also there, not just technical skills, because that's where the gap that we really saw and are still seeing. Yung companies are just excited to implement the tech, but without proper understanding really of how tech and the business would be linked together. So we emphasize on understanding that language of business, the language of the enterprise to our technical people. And to your point, Ibba, whenever, because our students are also interacting or working with stakeholders, and we tell them, you're not there to teach them what they already know, no? You're there to learn from them so that you have a much more intelligent model that actually agrees with not necessarily always agrees with the expectation, but at least within the expectations of the clients, that you're not there to impose all of these new things, truly to understand. So yes, Steph, they're now, all over like different companies and organizations here and abroad. So I'm just happy. And then a few of them are really leading initiatives in their own respective organizations, being mindful as well to be responsible data scientists. So I'm really proud of that particular aspect.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What are they saying back to you about, if we're talking about who is following in our footsteps, the changes that we're trying to see? I feel like your students and my team for us would be I have 150 people now working at Thinking Machines and
wow, crazy. That's
graduates. Huge. Yeah, right. It's really huge. It's a different beast. And one thing I've been grateful for is that as people graduate from Thinking Machines, or as people kind of grow and stay within the company, they start getting really, really sophisticated and developing their own opinions about, and they can act totally independently. So a couple of them have started startups. And I actually learned a lot from one of my former employees who started a blockchain technology startup, and he moved to Singapore. And I was like, dude, Enzo, can you tell me what the heck this whole crypto thing is all about? And use a language that we both speak. And so he talked about it from perspective of databases. A couple more have gone for PhDs in different places, and a couple more in tech jobs internationally. But I learn a lot now from them about the challenges of being a data professional in different places. One of them is working in, one of them is working in a space where, so she is trying to find machine learning solutions to carbon capture problems of carbon capture, carbon markets. And I find it so fascinating when she talks to me about her challenges taking academic research and connecting it to applied work. Because I'm more often coming from the perspective of we're trying to apply things. We're very rarely doing pure R&D. And so having all of these kids, or hindi a kid, so that having all these people help me expand my viewpoint, my brain is bigger. I really think that's the value of a big, different communities, different interlocking communities that all connect to you in some way. And something I'm very grateful for as I've just grown in my field. And I feel at this point, they don't have I don't have much to teach them. They teach me as much as I teach them. It's really fantastic. That's really all I want in life.
No, super the same, right? For example, I would always have lunches, Steph. I really I make it a point to meet with our graduates, because I feel now they're much more knowledgeable on what's really out there in the real world. And it's just hey, so what are the things that you've learned so far? And they would talk about data governance, how it's a pain in the neck, and how difficult it is to really navigate small versus large enterprise, and just listen to them. And also that's the beauty of AIM's MSDS program, because we're very dynamic, no? We get to reflect what we learn from our alumni and implement that in the program as well. For example, we will now be offering Steph, I know it's long overdue, but it's difficult to find the talent, ML Ops. So it will now be part of the curriculum, essentially because we're learning from the experts, the alumni. And I'm just going to circle back to what Ibba said, that, ego has no place here. It just listen and absorb, and then, and then learn that, oh, this is an impactful thing to do. Okay, we should implement that, right? So now we have a lot of advisors because of our graduates, right? Sorry, Ibba, I interrupted you.
No. What I'm so inspired, but with what you two are doing, because I was talking to, and we're not close. I was medyo fanboying, but I saw him in a conference, Dado Banatao, and I was pitching something to him, because as an entrepreneur, you're always pitching. He goes, no, I'm not interested in what you're doing, because this is my vision. And he goes, if you have one Dado Banatao, great. But what you need to do is create a generation of them. And if you have one Steph C, that's awesome, right? But now if you have a Steph C with an Erika, you multiply each other. You create more value. And now Erika, you've got, hundreds of students who are out there multiplying people. And Steph, everybody who's worked with you is going out there and they're multiplying. And that's when you have real impact. Right, not just, you can't do it on your own, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the impact you two are having now and like in the next 10 years with all the people that you're training and teaching, and that blows my mind.
You too, right? Because it's always about that planet, like you're not just giving people tools to become more successful Sari owners. You're giving them the mental tools of how do I think about this? Because when you're just focused on your day-to-day, you get like really wrapped up. Like you said earlier, you're like on your own planet. You're completely like, this is all you see. This is like all you can conceive of. Your like ability to conceive of solutions or ways of moving or acting beyond what you see day-to-day. It's very hard to move beyond that. So I really think that access to technology is also access to different modes of thinking and more agency. Like, I think it's so important to me that people have this belief that they can act, that they don't feel trapped in their circumstances. Because I think that's very rarely true. But it's just such like it's a stretch that's so unimaginably hard. When you're like in that box, it's just so hard to see outside the box when you're in it.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is unimaginably hard. Us as astronauts, as traveling to these, we have to expand people's imagination of what can be done. I think those kids in Smoky Mountain, the only thing I taught them was really to imagine something else. And they did the rest of the work. You know what I mean? Like a friend of mine, his mom was a rice farmer. And there was something different about her because she felt that I need to work hard and save so that my kids can go to college, which is, they were the only ones in their village that went to college. And he ended up becoming an entrepreneur, and she really slaved at helping him and his brother get that education. And she was the one with that imagination, with that dream, right? It's powerful. It's powerful being able to imagine the unimaginable.
It's why I don't like sometimes we have a hero culture in the Philippines. I don't know if you guys have, I'm 100% sure you've experienced this, right? Where somebody, yung Lodi, the whole like idol Lodi thing of like, oh, but they try to put you on a pedestal. But I don't think that's helpful because the goal is not to be put on a pedestal. Because when you put somebody else on a pedestal, you're also kind of saying that I could never be like that person. I cannot imagine that my life could be like that. But it's for me more about how do we create more, how do we inspire each other? And I think inspiration has to come from a place of, you have to be able to see yourself in the other person's shoes. You have to see a level of possibility there. I think that's the most important thing that people who, at least the people who work for me or who interned in Thinking Machines, they leave with, which is like, they can see that I can do it too. You know, they get inspired. They don't get inspired in a way that drives them to act and to like see themselves in that seat. Because it's not like, if we're talking about changing the Philippines, right? And I say that in like a slightly sarcastic way, like, oh, changing the Philippines. You really have to have so many people who believe that they can make a change, all working together. I do think we have a hero culture in the Philippines, and I think my favorite parts of working with people are when we see each other as like, hey, we're all flawed people, but we all working together can make things happen. But yeah, we're not looking for a hero, but not in a way that's like looking for a savior, looking for a hero, looking for that one politician who's going to make everything better for us. Because it's so much pressure on those people too, right? Like, I've met some really brilliant, like really well-meaning, really hardworking people in politics, people like running conglomerates, and they're just people. They also get incredibly stressed out and they cannot act themselves on everything.
This is why, Steph, you're really a woman after my own heart, because I couldn't.
That's what we bad, girl.
Yeah, so that's what, it's really a community thing. It's a team thing, and what I always say is we all have different roles to play, and the more diverse, the better, right? As long as we have the same vision, which is to improve the well-being of everyone, to improve societies and communities. We all have this particular role to play, and I really, really don't like that like hero culture. Just gives me the creeps.
But for me, okay, maybe this isn't hero culture, but like Steph, I love sci-fi and it inspires me, right? I love great stories, and the successful stories that people see are, ay, nakatrabaho sa customs. Diba? So, like, maybe it's not hero culture. I mean, I don't want to be a hero, but one of the things that drives me is I want to create an incredibly successful, massive startup that inspires people to and gives them a roadmap wherein they know that they can do something good and do good for themselves. You know what I mean? Not like a different path, not just doing like and there are a couple of startups that are doing that now, right? And once we have that inspirational story, then I think that will have massive impact as well. And I think, Steph, Erika, what you're doing, maybe it's not Lodi, but we need you to be that kind of inspirational guide for people who want to get into the data space, who want to create impact, but, are trying to figure out how. So right? It's different.
Yeah. It's like the difference between this is beyond, like, I could never, and like, hey, I couldn't, like, wow, like that could be.
Like, I think Manny Pacquiao, I mean, taking away the boxing success story, I mean, the other stuff, if you look at him, and he's inspired a lot of people.
Inspiring. We have some of the best boxers in the region now. In the world.
Yeah. So having that kind of success story, that kind of Stephanie C., Erika Legara success story.
Ibba.
In Ibba, yes.
It's very important.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Steph, what we don't like, I totally agree with Ibba. It's more the personality based kind of adoration. Ibba is like not so much about the story anymore, but now about the person. And there's this, diba, sometimes just mention the name, suddenly, there's the different adoration already that we're seeing. Maybe it's more that we don't like that particular aspect, but really you're right about the story and inspiration. Focus on the story, not so much on the person who's leading the story.
It's like any anime, right? The person starts off like the weakest, the dumbest, but that person just keeps on working and working and working until they become the best. And that's the kind of stories we need, right?
Exactly.
All right. What are you looking forward to as a new Asia 21 member? So
for me.
Okay.
Erika.
No, really excited, like what I said. Just listening to both of you, I now have a preview of what it's gonna be like. It's really learning, more on like really learning from the experiences, expanding the network, jumping from from one planet to another planet, as you put it, Ibba. I'm really just excited to learn and also start, initiatives and maybe programs to further strengthen our advocacies and improve societies and communities as a whole. And yeah, it's really just learning from you and from your stories, and to get to know more people like you with this passion to just be of service, no matter which particular space we're in.
I guess I can give you some advice, being like the oldest.
Yes, please.
No longer young leader.
Go,
And
go.
it's basically advice my dad has given me, and I think it's one is being part of this network of different people. Showing up is 80%, right? I think that was from a Peter Sellers movie. Just show up, and like today, showing up, you're gonna get so much. You're gonna get inspired. You're gonna learn, and there's so many awesome people in this network doing so many different things that the cross pollination is ridiculous. The second thing would be don't ask, don't get. So don't be shy, because everybody here wants to help you. They want to share. They want to support you. They want you to be successful. And I guess the last thing that I would, my last piece of advice is something I learned from Techstars, which I love their motto, which is give first.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you put in mix, don't ask, don't get, and give first, that's an awesome combination for a group. And everybody here in A21, if you ask me for help, I'll be there. You know what I mean? Like I'll give you an example. We have a relatively young organization at Packworks, and we're growing really quickly, and we are working remotely. So how do we build a great company culture that way? And it's tough. One of the things we have, which internally we call, for Packworks, we call it PackU. But
My goodness.
I've roped in, and I know they focus on younger people, right? But I've roped in Amina from Roots of Health to give a talk and give a sex education talk, like no holds barred to our people, because in the Philippines, that's really not something that people are taught, really, right? So there was a lot of blushing, a lot of joking. And then I also got asked Doc Brian, whenever some new pandemic or new strain comes out, to give a talk as well, monkeypox. And that was a really kind of graphic talk. But just inviting and learning from all of these different people. Mark, of course, Ruiz, Sari Stores has been my inspiration. So yeah, show up, don't ask, don't get, and give first.
I'm already getting a lot from this network just by like these three super important advice. Show up, don't ask, don't get, and give first. Love it.
Love it. I'm gonna have that on my checklist this December. I'm excited. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I've been to one. I think it was in the last pre-COVID batch, so 2019, I believe. I managed to go to the annual meetup, and frankly, I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to a lot of like professional events, and that one was my favorite by far, because not only were the people very accomplished, and everyone was accomplished in very different ways, there was just like a sense of openness, a sense of good humor, a sense of like humor, openness, and nobody was fronting, right? Like everybody was able to be more vulnerable and relaxed. And in that vulnerability, I really was able to get a lot out of, give a lot and get a lot. Because I didn't feel like I need to posture. I didn't feel like I need to present a friend of like, oh no, I'm a super successful tech entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. Because everybody there, I think one friend I made there, she won the Pulitzer Prize like 2 years later. I was like, wow, oh my God. And my strongest memory of her is her pranking the WhatsApp group that we had put together for that conference. And it's just wonderful to see to have that level like trust, vulnerability, good humor. I think from that comes a lot more creativity and just exciting new different ways of thinking. For me, the worst thing you could do to yourself is try act from a place of fear or insecurity or greed. I think that fear, insecurity, and greed narrows your field of vision to something like super, super tight, makes you your worst self. And my favorite thing about this organization is so far, I think everybody I've met is not like it's expansive. It has that sense of vulnerability and humanness that allows for playfulness, fun, creativity, innovation, all the good stuff.
Wow, I mean, you somehow you gave me that idea, Steph, right? When we were at Manila House, you already told me that among all of the conferences, this was like the one that you attended was by far the best, and I was just like, oh, I really am super excited to just see the openness from really awesome individuals, and just and this is also why I enjoy catching up with people like you, because I love the vulnerability part. I love listening to and learning from the challenges that everybody's facing, and learning as well how they address these challenges, and that just there are no walls, just really casual sharing and just being honest with each other. I love that. So that's really what I'm looking forward to as a new A21 fellow or member. So thanks for the shares.
I think that's a great way to end it.